Gaming Bolt presents 14 scary bosses in non-horror video games. You expect to be horrified when playing a game that is meant to startle or spook the player, be it jump scares that can frighten the player at any moment, or long-lasting, suspenseful, psychological unease. You knew what you were getting into when you put that disc into the tray or pressed download on your console. But when playing a video game that isn't inherently horror, you don't expect there to be any out-of-place bosses that will leave you needing a change of pants. Make sure to leave the lights on and maybe tell your parents to stay in the room. Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. The entire premise of Kingdom Hearts as a whole isn't the most lighthearted of all games. You are fighting the darkness in people's hearts, after all. Most of the bosses aren't scary though, not to most people anyway. Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, was the main antagonist in the first game and has a reprised role in Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. What made Dream Drop Distance stand out from the others was its branching story path, which allows the player to not only play as the beloved keybearer Sora, but also his best bud Riku in a big story that links together in the end. In Riku's side of the story, you fought a lot of enemies, however, without some serious grinding, none of them could have prepared you for Ansem, Seeker of Darkness. Acting as the final boss in Riku's storyline, Ansem was bound to be hard, but what makes him scary? Well, if it wasn't scary enough that this battle will force the player to grind, or else it is a serious battle of luck, he also has a lot of attacks that can come out of nowhere if you aren't right up on him. You may remember his Guardian from the previous games. Well, it's back and possibly a bit creepier. It guards him from taking damage in some parts of the fight and even assists him to deal with the player. Then there's the room you fight in. It's eerie and dark and the music doesn't help either. Then there's the second round that has him encased in his Guardian, which is kind of creepy. All the while, the surrounding area is even more unsettling than the first round. Pandora, Revelations Persona. Side-scrollers tend to have one or two bosses that just don't belong in the game. In Revelations Persona, it was Pandora. Set as the final boss of the game, Pandora was the monster incarnation of Pandora's box. Not surprisingly, its design was really unsettling, and the surroundings were just as creepy. Now imagine being a kid and seeing this thing. Oh yeah, and the cutscene is what nightmare fuel is made of. Spider Queen, Okami. How many of you watching this video have arachnophobia? Well, you will love this entry then. Okami is debatably one of the most stylish games to ever be created. It almost makes the player feel like they're playing a water painting. Spider Queen was a boss to marvel at, not because she was late in the game, but rather because she was the first boss, and the first boss will usually set what you can expect from the game. The boss takes the shape of a giant spider. While that alone is creepy enough for some, she also has a woman's torso and head with no eyes or nose. Combine this with a screeching you hear during the fight as you attack its eyes, and you have the perfect brew to scare someone. Possessed Walter / The Crawler, Fable 3. Some games are pretty short. That's how it was with Fable 3, or so we thought. Quickly after what we thought would have been the ending, we learned that there was a new enemy coming to Albion. What a surprise it was for the player that the final boss was going to be your most loyal friend and companion, possessed by the Crawler. This creature is the creepy or scary part about this whole thing. While you don't see the creature often in its natural form, the psychological damage it has done was surely there. But if you look at the figure of the creature, I'm sure it reminds a lot of people of those kinds of creatures you had nightmare about as children. The Crawler possessed Walter, and left with no other option, the player had to kill him, though at least you gave a memorial dedicated to your fallen comrade. Nihilanth, Half-Life. Half-Life wasn't inherently supposed to be scary, but Valve really managed to hit the nail on the coffin with this one. Nihilanth from Half-Life was the main antagonist and leader of the Zen aliens. Not only are his attacks dangerous, as one of them can cause a lot of damage and a small splash radius, but it can also teleport the player to another room filled with hostile aliens. Then there is his freakishly disturbing design. Everything is wrong with this boss, from its deformed head and its large, disgusting three-fingered hands to its stocky and malformed arms and legs. This thing is going to show up in your nightmares tonight. Matt Helms, No More Heroes 2 Desperate Struggle. While No More Heroes and its sequel were more of a humor game series rather than a scary one character from No More Heroes 2 Desperate Struggle stands out from the rest. Unlike many of the other opponents in the game, Matt Helms isn't afraid to show off his scary side. Not only is this ghost flaunting an unsettling and downright scary smiling mask, but he is also wielding a flamethrower that doubles as an axe. If that wasn't scary enough, even when you beat him and his head literally explodes, he appears as a little boy who mumbles, "I'm going to kill you." He is then shot by Sylvia and his backstory is explained. All the while, Helms got up and jogs away, laughing crazily. Psycho Mantis, Metal Gear Solid. During the PlayStation era, there were few games that were as innovative as the Metal Gear series. In Metal Gear Solid, there was a boss known as Psycho Mantis. He used his powers of psychokinesis and telepathy to fight the player. But right before the fight, the player was giving something completely new to most any gamer. Among the rant that Psycho Mantis made to try to prove to the player he could read your mind, he began listing off a number of games that the player had in their saves. This is creepy just because of the era this game was released in. Crocodile, Super Metroid. Super Metroid was a game that was and still is really popular. While going to get the grapple beam, you will encounter a large red crocodile-like creature with 4 visible eyes and a large, lanky, robotic-like arm. While this is by no means scary nowadays, imagine being a child and seeing this, a screeching crocodile-like creature stumbling forward unless you shoot it at the right time in the mouth until it falls into a pit of lava. But even then, it still comes back in a fully skeletal state. Mimi, Super Paper Mario. Of all the games to see a scary boss in, you would not expect any Mario game, especially a Paper Mario. But in Super Paper Mario, there was a boss known as Mimi. While she doesn't look too terrifying, the scary part comes from the cracking noises her head makes as it turns left, right, and all around. And then spider legs grow out of her head, and then you have the true Mimi. This isn't too scary, but it definitely is out of place in such a bright and colorful game like Super Paper Mario. The Thorian, Mass Effect. Found on Pharos in the first Mass Effect game, the Thorian used mind-controlled Asaris and creatures known as the Thorian Creepers to fight the player, while you are tasked to attack its tentacles attached to the walls. The design of those creatures seemingly don't have prevalent eyes, but rather sockets, and the fact that it just dangles there, watching you while you fight it is rather unsettling. Shadow Teddy, Persona 4. Is there that much to say about this deep, demonic, graveling-voiced shadow creature? This is the shadow version of one of the playable characters of Persona 4, Teddy. Most of the time, Teddy is happy with not a real care in the world, but when he went through a bout of depression as he began trying to figure out why he exists, he created this version of himself. Shadow Teddy has holes in his face that show nothing other than darkness, which is kind of disturbing, but at the same time, this game was still rather colorful even within the fight. Gygus, Earthbound. Who doesn't know of this twisted final boss? Earthbound wasn't meant to be a horror game, more taking the approach of a role-playing action-adventure game, but nevertheless, here we have the final boss of the game, Gygus. He is an overpowered final boss. The only method of actually beating him is keeping Paula alive. The disturbing music and unsettling appearance from the first section of the fight to the last really makes the player feel uneasy. This isn't even mentioning the theories circulating the internet. The Sorrow, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. We already had a boss who knew the games you'd played, so why not a man who holds the abilities of ESP, precognition, and medium powers? If you thought that sounds kind of far-fetched, I give you the Sorrow from Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. While his design isn't as menacing like Gygus, the sheer fact that he brought back a number of souls to slowly walk towards the player while he follows the boss down a stream is just plain creepy if not scary. You never even actually fight him in the end, you just follow him until the end of the section. The Scarecrow, Batman Arkham Asylum. You knew this one was coming, I know it. You can't make a video on scary bosses without at least giving this guy some love in the top 5s. From the Scarecrow's unsettling fear toxin-induced hallucinations to his revamped design, it wouldn't be surprising if the player was scared of making it to this point of Batman Arkham Asylum. He even hit home to some gamers by making their TV or consoles seemingly bug out on them. Well played, Crane. Well played. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.